And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our show. And please welcome Susan Lieu. Well, I'm just so thrilled to have you on our show, Susan. Susan is an author. She's done lots of things, and she's here to join us to talk about her book, The Manicurist's Daughter, a memoir. You are also a writer, and you performed a terrific one-woman show that actually was touring around the country. It's called 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother. That is an incredible one-woman show, and I believe that it's available on your website. You are the co-founder of a of So Coda chocolate store,
Chocolat
right?
chocolatier. Chocolat chocolatier.
Okay, and you co-founded that with your sister. So we're going to talk to you about that. You're a Harvard grad, also went to the Yale School of Management, and you're here also to talk to us about grief, which really inspired you writing this memoir about your mother. So thank you again for joining us. You've done lots of things, and you're an inspiring lady. So thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah, talk to me about The Manicurist's Daughter. What is it about? Why did you decide to write this?
Yeah, it's my family memoir, and it's the story of an American dream gone terribly wrong. So when I
Hmm.
was 11 years old, my mother went in for plastic surgery, a tummy tuck, thinning of her nostrils, and a chin implant. She thought she'd be coming
Wow.
home the next day with her beautiful new body. She dies. She's in
Hmm.
a coma. We find out later that the doctor was on probation, had 19 lawsuits against him, no medical malpractice insurance, and actively targeted Vietnamese refugees. And for the next 2 decades, my family has never spoken of her or how she died. So before I could
That
become a mother, I said I needed to know who she was. And that was the
wow.
impetus for the show and the book.
That's often very common with immigrant families, right? Something tragic happens, and all of a sudden there's no mention of these people again. You're a little kid and you're trying to make sense of stuff. You got to go, through your life, but it never really goes away, does it?
No, and this makes no sense. My mother was a matriarch of the family. She was running 2 nail salons. We were 13 people in a 4 bedroom house. She was our powerhouse. She was our lighthouse. Boom, she disappears and we never speak of her ever again. Like that in itself was a new trauma.
Hmm. Where was your family from? And I believed they had 5 failed attempts to come here. So that's gutsy too. Talk to me about the family.
Yeah, we were Vietnamese boat people. We came over in 1983, but you're right, there were 5 failed attempts. We are from the Mekong Delta. My parents were low income, lived in a rural area, didn't finish high school. And the
Hmm.
only way we even had enough money to have the opportunity to try to escape was my mom operated an underground lottery ring, and she won the lottery
Wow.
herself 3 times to have enough money to buy 4 tickets, one for her, my dad, and my 2 brothers. And they tried to escape multiple times. And it was on the sixth time that they made it on a boat to a Malaysian refugee camp.
Wow. And then how about you and your sister?
My sister was born in that Malaysian refugee camp in 1982. And then we came to America in 83 to the Bay Area. And then I was born in 85.
Yeah. So you didn't have to go through any of that even as a little kid, but wow, the stories they could all tell. I mean, I know they were very, very little, and clearly your sister wouldn't remember anything, but that's a lot of trauma. But it really goes to show what so many people go through to come here to try and live a life of freedom, doesn't it?
Right. And I mean, that's another premise of my book is that it's also about intergenerational trauma and healing. Yes, I personally did not escape on that boat, but the unresolved PTSD that my family went through that we never processed, didn't have the tools to process, was handed down to me. And I
Mm.
thought to myself before I could become a mom, I needed to deal with all of that around the trauma of being refugees, around trauma around grief and our body image. If I didn't deal with that, I would pass that on to my son.
Mm. Talk to me about being a refugee. What did that feel like? What did they impart on you? Was it about work, work, work? I know my family was pretty strict. They had a saying. They said, "We're going to total it up at 25." And I'm thinking, what does that mean? In other words, I had to make something of myself and I better do it. And we're going to see when you're 25. And I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm 5 years old. What are you talking about? They were people who came from very little and struggled so hard. They don't want that for their kids, so they tend to be so tough on the kids. Did you go through that, or what was it like?
100%. I mean, my
Yeah.
entire childhood, I did not have summer camps. I did not have just sleepovers. It was all about the nail salon. So I have memories going back as early as when I was 6 years old, working at the nail salon with my sister, taking off the polish, reorganizing all the magazines. I remember when I was finally, I think 7, my mom said, "You're ready to start confirming the nail salon appointments." But it was a family affair because by
Yeah.
the time my mom, she was working so hard, she knew that she had to get off welfare because when that could happen, she could sponsor over her 3 sisters and her parents to come help with the business, right? So she was
Wow.
working so hard, and the family came together, and we were this unit. I felt like we were this operative in a way, like, to make this happen. So that was my childhood, is just growing up in the nail salon, and I remember I only have a few memories of my mother, which is the
Mm.
sad part, and I used to ask my family for memories, and they were like, "You're living in the past." They didn't wanna talk about them. But one
Yeah.
vivid memory I have for my mother was like, "Ma, like, what's your advice for living life?" And she was like, "You have 2 hands, 1 heart, and 1 mind. Do something with your life. You're like everybody else." Right? Like, she wasn't saying, "Oh my god, we're so disadvantaged and so oppressed, like, and everything's against us." She said, "Make something of yourself." And she
Well,
modeled that for us all the time.
people didn't have time to sit there and wallow in what was going wrong because a lot was going wrong. They just had to fix it on the fly, right? They had to figure it out. They had to put food on the table somehow, needed a roof over the head, and they just didn't have time, right?
I think, because we were Vietnamese refugees, we had grown up in so much war. Prior
Yeah.
decades, there was always a war happening, and so what was
Yeah.
the point of dwelling in the past? The only thing you knew for certain was today and today's meal. That's all you knew for
Mm.
certain. So let's make that meal great, but we have to move forward. We can't look to the past. But what I was grappling with was that if we don't resolve the past, I don't think I can live in the present. And that's where
Yeah.
I started to have disagreement with my family. And then I had
Yeah.
to go on
Oh.
my own journey to search for her.
What was it like? Well, first of all, actually, let me ask this. She's obviously a very bright woman to come here and open 2 nail salons, her own business. How did she do that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, she started off in hair.
Uh,
And she went to beauty school, cosmetology school, she started in hair, and then she realized that's not what the money is. The money is in nails, right? Because
mm,
back in the mid-70s, Tippi Hedren, who was, an actress in the Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, she went to a refugee camp in Northern California, saw these women who just came from Vietnam, wanted to help them, and she didn't know how, and they looked at her nails, and they were like, "Whoa, what is that?" Because at the time in the '70s, only celebrities could have manicures and fills. Like, it
oh,
was not
wow.
commonplace the way it is today. So she taught 20 women how to do nails. They continued to move around the country. They would then sponsor over their family. They would train them because it's you don't need a lot of a high command of English to be successful at nails, right? It's round or square. Hello, how are you? Right? It's not that as complex as another type of job. And so now they're teaching their family, they're sponsoring them over, and then that is why 80% of nail salons are owned by Vietnamese folks in California.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. And by the way, Tippy is a friend of mine. She is lovely. And she, runs her animal refugee there for animals, large cats, large animals that were domesticated. And then, they needed some place to go. And she is a lovely, lovely person, always was, still is.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned her, it's sort of, I got a smile on my face because I thought, wow, that's very Tippy, very, very tippy. But how exciting that they saw her and looked at her nails and thought, wow, that's kind of a neat story. So she comes here. She's successful. Dad helps with the business, right?
Yeah. And then
Everybody's helping. Go
yeah,
ahead.
the aunts, the grandparents, everyone is doing their part. And we are bustling and
Yeah.
we have cars, we have a home now and we have the American dream
Yeah.
until my mother goes in for plastic surgery and has a botched tummy tuck.
Did anybody know she was going for the plastic surgery?
My aunt knew and my dad knew. My dad drove her that day.
Wow. Did she ever express why? I mean, that might be seem like a ridiculous question, but obviously, I guess she wanted to feel better about the way she looked. But was there something inside of her that was saying, "I'm never quite going to be good enough"? Look at these girls in the magazines. I want to look more like them. Like, by asking family members, if you ever got the answer, what was going through her mind, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten very simplified answers over the years that were never satisfying. Like, she just wanted to feel pretty, right? But after I had a kid, my kid's 4 now, I touch my tummy area. I wish I could start over. I get it. She had 4 kids. She was working 7 days a week, always sitting in her nail salon chair. There was no such thing as self-care. There was no
Yeah,
such thing as time to herself. So even the means to work out was not there. And
right.
everything was about the family. She was always
Yeah,
for the family. So finally she had something for herself, right? As a busy
yeah,
mom, I I get that need. She's working in the beauty industry. They fixate on beauty. Yes, there's a lot of Cosmo magazines that are flowing through. But remember, on Sundays, when we would only open at 11 a.m. instead of 9 a.m., those precious hours, we were watching a program called Paris by Night. And it was a Vietnamese variety show. And Vietnamese women, they usually wear these tight áo dais. It's like our traditional dress. And even my mother and her aunts or her sisters would be like, she's getting a little fat, like that
oh
person,
wow,
yeah, không coi được, like, like it just doesn't look right on them. So
wow.
we as a community are judgmental and reinforcing impossible beauty standards, right? Like, it's not like I feel bad about myself and I have low self-esteem. It's like we have constant societal pressures telling us this is what worthiness looks like. And if she has no time, but maybe she has a little money to solve that problem, that's why she did it.
Wow, so nobody spoke about it, right? Even at her funeral?
No, no, the term was mổ bụng, which is stomach surgery. And so I didn't realize all the different procedures that she got until nobody talked about her. And then I went to go dig for the depositions from the lawyer who we had tried to sue the doctor, but he had no medical malpractice insurance. So he loses his license for 2 years, walks away, doesn't pay us a dime, and then continues
Wow.
to practice on probation for the next decade until I search for him and find out he died.
Oh, that's an incredible story. What did you feel like at the age of 11? You're attending your mother's funeral. That's shocking enough. And then I guess after the funeral, life just goes on, right? Nobody's talking about mom. How did you make your way through all that? You and your siblings.
My God. Well, first, my siblings and I didn't talk about it. I remember I
Wow.
was just gonna go back to school the next day, and my dad was like, take a week off. And then everyone was gone from the house. And so I just went to the library and I lost myself in books and I would volunteer there and shelve books and put Mylar in books. Like, I was a lonely kid. Uh,
Yeah.
and I remember 1 year later, my dad and aunts were like, hey, don't eat a second bowl of rice, because if you get too fat, no one will
Mm.
love you and you'll die alone.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm getting these messages at home, and what do? I turn to dieting, I turn to intense exercise, but I also turn to food for emotional comfort. It's a very warped relationship with food that I have, right? Because we are not emotional in our family. We don't have the tools to express I feel statements. We don't go I feel feeling word like I feel disappointed, I feel discouraged, I feel sad. It's more like I feel like you're dumb, right? Like if you're pestering
wow.
me to get this information, I feel like you're dumb. Stop it, right? And for me, growing up in a Vietnamese culture, it's like there is a hierarchy. You listen to your elders. You get shut down. You should be shut down, right? There was no pushback, there was no comfort. I used to watch Full House and wish that that could be our family. And
Oh,
at the
tell me about it. I
it's
remember that too. And it's
it's
like, and especially the Brady Bunch, right? Perfect mom, perfect dad.
not.
He's sitting there doing his work in his little study, and within 20 minutes, all the family problems are solved. They had an Alice, and I'm thinking, man, if only, right?
Oh
Tell me
yeah,
about it.
right. So I mean, I think but I want to let you know that this was all very normalized, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
you're like, Susan, you're so emotional, like you're stuck in the past. And I'm sitting there, I'm 11, I'm 12. And so what I dive into student government and community service. because that's where I feel a sense of belonging. I feel seen from adult mentors. I feel like when I show up, I'm worthwhile and enough. I'm still
Yeah.
helping at the nail salon. My sister and I are working there on the weekends. I'm there during the summer and during high school. And I remember my crushes would walk by the window because it was on 4th Street on the main road in town. And I'd be mortified. I was so embarrassed. Like, I was still a high schooler. I was still a kid.
Yeah. Were you working after that, after mom passed away at the nail salon? Like, what was going on there? I mean, so you're just showing up. I mean, did you look around and go, I'm here, but she's not? That's such a hard feeling. And to be young and go through that is even worse. What was that like?
Yeah, after about 2 years after my mom passed, my aunts, the 3 aunts and my grandparents moved out. So this
Wow.
like very vibrant house became very quiet. And then
Hmm.
eventually my dad remarried. Stepmom moves in. She's wonderful. She's nice. I have a great relationship with her. But if you can imagine this big, big house just suddenly becoming very quiet.
Yeah.
And then my dad is and my stepmom are working at the nail salon. It's very imperative that I'm there. We hire non-relatives, and we're just trying to make it. But we were
Yeah.
always barely making it, and I think we were teetering on bankruptcy for years.
Wow. So you end up working very hard and you end up studying at Harvard. Tell me about that, because clearly you heard the message at home, right? You got to keep working, don't be emotional, keep going, and you end up at Harvard. What did you study? And still, all of this was in the back of your mind, like what happened, right?
Right, yeah, so I was a social studies major, which is
Yeah.
interdisciplinary social sciences. It is one of the nerdiest, we call them concentrations at Harvard. So for me, I was a social justice, international development, public health track. Like I was trying to figure out how do I change the world.
Right. Of
Um,
course.
but while I was at Harvard, I got myself into a little bit of a debacle because I joined a
Hmm.
cult, a
Ah.
Korean yoga cult. And so part of that was I wasn't feeling the belonging that I wanted in my family. I always felt like the black sheep. And I saw this flyer for free yoga at the Harvard Divinity School. And I was like, oh my God, yoga, they were like $13, $18 a class. I was a low income student. I was on 90% scholarship to be there. And I said, oh, great. And when I took those yoga classes, they made us do this thing called monkey pose where you're on your back, you have your legs up at 90 degrees, your hands are up, and you're it's like an ab pose for like 5 minutes. My entire body is shaking. And all of a sudden I can hear in my head, no. I hear the voices of no from my father, my brother, society,
Wow.
like, all the no that people have said against me. And I started fighting back. I was having this, it was a very metaphysical experience. And I was like, whoa, I thought I was just here to do cat cow. Like I was like, what is happening right now? And it became
Wow.
spiritual. And so I just kept going to more classes. I went to a weekend program and then I went to Sedona, their retreat center, and I got sucked in because one of the main masters, Sabanim's like teacher, she became a maternal figure for me, Michelle Neem in the book. And I get sucked in. And I changed my thesis topic. Um, I was going to go to Vietnam and research HIV/AIDS prevention programs for sex workers.
Hmm.
Changed that topic to study mind body programs and leadership development so that I could study them and spend more time with them. And here's the sad part. There were many times that I realized it was a cult. I would talk to my thesis advisor about it. We were thinking about changing the crux of the thesis, but I stayed anyways because
But let
I
me stop you. You say it was a cult, but the way you describe it to the audience, it doesn't sound like one. It sounds like, you were doing meditation and the monkey pose thing. Like, how did it become a cult to you and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, well, there was always more classes and more healing sessions to pay for and more retreats, and
I
they
got it.
encouraged me to take out student loans to pay for them,
Oh,
and my financial aid's office said no, and then they encouraged me to ask my friends and family, and my aunt, who I had not had a relationship with since my mother passed, said no, and then so I took out credit card loans at 14 to
oh,
20% interest. So I would say that was starting to go towards cult vibes.
Yep.
But it was ironic because they were like, but this is about bringing health and happiness and peace to yourself and to the world, and I could buy into that. But then I said, well, why is this only for people who have access to money?
Right.
And they were like, Susan, this is mind energy. It's like people who are operating at a certain vibration are ready for this versus that. And I'm sitting there going like, there is something wrong here. Because I grew up
Yeah.
low income, right? And I always found opportunities. I would fill out scholarship applications, and here I was like, what is happening here? So I felt like that was pretty cultish. And
It was. Go ahead.
and they had their one leader named Ilchi Lee, and everything was about him.
Hmm. But you eventually realized that and got strong enough to get out, right?
Yeah. An
Yeah.
ex-boyfriend got me out.
Wow. But then, I mean, this whole story of yours is building. And it's all because of grief. It's all because of people not talking about their feelings. It's all because of people saying, not that extra bowl of rice now, and you're looking for meaning. You're looking for somebody to care about you, aren't we all? And what was it where you decided, you know what, I have to get real help, good help? What was it? Was it because you were about to have a daughter, or you just realized, I keep searching and I'm not getting the answers I need? What happened?
I mean, I think when you become like everything in high school is all about going to college and you're gunning for that. But once you're in college, you're like, what am I supposed to do with my life?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think I was living a life of where I would follow my intuition. But over time I really wanted to please my father,
mm,
and to be a good daughter was to have a stable job. And so I eventually went to business school, went to Yale School of Management, got a job in the private sector, did the good Vietnamese daughter thing, which was to give him money every month because I mean, he didn't have a retirement, he did nails. And I hated my life. Boy,
yeah,
did I hate my life. I didn't feel seen at work. I felt like I could always do more. And then I did what most adults do when they want a distraction, which was I got married.
right,
And then that's where the pressure started coming from my dad
mm,
and aunts to have kids. And I thought, one, how can I become a mother if I never knew my own? If things went wrong, went south, who would I call? Concurrently, two, how can I tell my kid, be what you want in life if I didn't? I knew I would be a tiger mom. I knew I would be like, hey, I paid for you. Now we have money. You can go to drama camp. But why didn't you get the lead in the play? You know what I mean? Like I knew I would project onto my kid because of what I didn't do. I had started in stand-up comedy years prior. Things were going great. In 6 months, I was headlining at the Purple Onion. And then I get heckled. And I go, this is a dumb idea. This is a dumb hobby. I'm not that good anyways. And I walk
ooh,
away from the thing that makes me feel alive. So I felt like a coward in my own life. And I thought, if I do not deal with my own shadow work around this, that's gonna be a trauma that I give to my kid. And worst case scenario, I pay for their therapy.
yeah. So what'd you do?
I told my husband, I need a 2-year container. Let's time box this before we really even think about kids. Like, I just need to get the wiggles out on performance. And I started doing very crazy. I went to like audition classes, got terrible airbrushed headshots. And then I took a class called solo performance class. First day of school, they said, tell a 5-minute story. And I said, okay, I wanted to avenge my mother's death. So I went to look for a killer. The room is silent. Everyone's
I'll
like,
bet.
are, are you serious? Like, have you performed this at the Moth before? And I was like, oh my God, of course not. The only person who knows this is my husband because I can't talk to my family about it. And then I go on to tell them the story of how I tried to track him down and everything I wanted to do, like to seek revenge on him. And then I found out he died. And that later becomes a one-woman show.
Talk about the one woman show for me. That takes a lot of guts, not only to obviously to write it, but to get out there and perform it. I know I've done some stand up comedy, and even though people encouraged me to continue, I had a bit of stage fright, even though I don't think you could tell when I was on stage. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I stopped. So I know it takes a lot of guts to get out there, write something, and perform it. Talk to me about it. I know that it went on to tour throughout the country, right?
Yeah. So 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother is a 65-minute solo show where I play 15 characters on stage. People are like, do you have props? Do you have costume changes? I'm like, no, I got a chair and I got myself.
Yeah.
That is the 5th iteration. So I had done all these solo shows prior to it because I actually didn't know the information around my mom. And so I would live go get information, find out about what happened to her, about her body image issues, about like where's the doctor now, and I actually tried to track down his kids. And every time I learned something new, I put it in the one woman show. So it was
Yeah.
iterative. And at the time, I don't have a degree in theater. I don't have an MFA. I have an MBA. And
Right.
so I was just learning in general how to do theater, meeting amazing collaborators around the way, teaching me how do you think about lighting and sound, and how do you work with directors and stage managers. And then February 2019, we kick off the show, sold out, 2-weekend run.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, like I'm ready to take out my IUD. You know what I mean? Like I, I was like, I'm not a coward. I did the thing that I always wanted to do. In a way, it was like this safe space outside of stand-up comedy, right? Because it's
Right.
theater, you're not expecting that someone's gonna heckle you. And if no one laughs, if no one claps, maybe it was just weird art. Like there was some safety to doing it in theater. And then I go, well, you know what? Maybe I should take it on a tour. But I
Yeah.
would drag my feet. I was totally dragging my feet to sign any of those contracts because I was scared. What if no one shows up? What if I lose money? What if this is over?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Wait, let me ask you a question. Hang on. Did your family go see the play?
so I got to tell you,
Yeah.
show number 1, I brought a recording of it back home for Christmas. We have this 5-day sleepover called Extreme Indulgence. I asked my sibling, I was like, we're going to have a showing. Only one sibling watched it.
Oh.
Okay. And he was like, that was really intense, Susan. I was like, okay. And then he just goes watch football.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Right? So I want to land you in where we were as a family. The
Yeah.
third show, in the book, I talked to this person named Psychic Cindy,
Right.
and it's recorded, and I bring it back to my sister. And basically, my mom is coming through. I have confirmed that it's my mom on the other side. And she says, I say, should I keep doing this? And Ma says, this is not about you. This is about the work we need to do. We are doing healing
Ooh.
work, and we're doing work of a mother's love. My sister hears that and says she's going to come to the third show.
Oh.
To the third show. And I did some wild stuff, Deborah. The show opens with a giant screen of just my fat, like my my midsection fat. And I talk about my friend fat and talk about my obsession with and my disappointment with my body. Like that was my body image show. And my sister comes to watch it, and she sees afterwards what usually happens after shows. People line up and they tell me their grievances. They tell me their stories. They tell me what my work does to resonate in their own lives around how they wish they could be close to their family, around their stuff around their body.
Yeah.
My God, this is not about you. I'm like, yeah, I've been trying to tell you that the whole time. So she goes to show number 3. Show number 5, the siblings, Wendy and Kang, they come to one of the last shows. They sit in the audience. My eyes lock on my sister's eyes. I lose my line.
Of course.
I was like, okay, now I know where they're sitting, and I'm always trying not to look at them because, we're sisters. We're just like we have ESP. Like it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
not, and I have like 10,000 words. Okay, like I got to keep going, and I'm like, oh my God. So right after the show's over, my sister leans over to my brother, and she was like, oh my God, did you really pull the plug on Ma? And he said yes.
Oh.
So through my research, we are learning about the unspoken. Then they come on stage afterwards for a post-show conversation. And this is the first time we're ever talking about my mom, but just in front of 140 people.
That's riveting. That is incredible. And I can't imagine how cathartic that was. Not just that night thinking about what just happened, but over time. You really needed that. And I really do believe that your mom had a hand in all of this. I do. I almost would like to say I know it, right? I feel it myself. I really do. What was that like for you?
It was so beautiful because I've been
Yeah.
asking them questions for so long, and now I can hear what they think of my work. They, I remember the moderator was like asking Kang like, "What do you think?" And he was like, "Well, I'm glad this happened because I was just wondering when Susan would get a job because she went to Harvard. Like, why does she have a job?" And it was
Oh
just
my God.
funny. It
That's,
was funny, but I was able to hear their feelings on things because Deborah, I got to tell you, in private it's
yeah.
still hard to have these conversations. Even after they've read the memoir, they know where my intentions are. How people deal or don't deal with grief is their own stuff. And what I'm trying to
Mm,
drive home in my book is that is what their best looks like. So for years, I personalized it. And I thought, why are you withholding information from me? What did I do to you? Why are you trying to make me suffer? All I want to know is another memory of Ma. And
yeah.
I did the pivot. And I realized this is their best. And I applied a lens of compassion onto them. My dynamic with them changed.
That's very important because clearly they were going through their own form of grief, which included burying it, right? Not talking about it. And then you're sitting there saying, come on, let's talk about it. I actually really relate to this in a different sort of, because everybody processes things differently. And then we internalize it and say, well, why aren't they communicating? And it's not even about you, it's about the way they're processing their own grief. Um, but how wonderful that you were able to figure that all out. It all kind of came together for you, didn't it?
My God, though, I gotta tell you, I am such a direct learner. And because all of this was so indirect, I'd be like, let me try again and again and again. And it was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
the thing is everyone does have boundaries, but some of
yeah.
them have indirect, unspoken boundaries, right? And I was just kind of a bonehead, just being like, oh, maybe I should just ask again. you know?
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, because you're sort of an out there person, right? You want to talk about it. You want to come, come on over and sit down and let's. That's just not who they are. But I think you got your answers, right? What did they all think of the book? Did they read the book?
So once my editor green lights it, and it was a crazy journey to write it. It took about 2 years. I was spinning in circles because I'm also not a trained writer, right?
Right.
My editor who edited Pachinko, she green lights it and she's like, okay, we're gonna go into deep editing now. And I was like, whoa, 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 give it back to me, give it back to me. So I
Yeah,
take it
yeah.
back for a month. I redline it. That's when I give it to my sister Wendy because
Oh,
she's the bridge to the rest of the family. Everyone's gonna be asking her like, what's the deal? Like, should we be nervous, right? So she reads it all. Right when I send it, right when I email it to her, my stomach is like turning and turning, and I'm so nervous about what she's gonna say. And then finally I get the 3 dots on iMessage and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And I call her and I was like, so? And she's like, you know, kind of reads like a really long journal entry. And I was like, and she goes, I have like 3 notes, and also the way you remembered it was completely wrong. That was not you, that was me. And I was like, okay, good. That's great. I can work with 3 notes, like it was just like 3 half phrases. But the thing is, it's a family narrative, right?
yeah.
And she was like, I think people are gonna be pissed if you keep it there. And I was like, that does not I told her, I was like, you do not have the power to strike chapters, right? Like I've written this entire narrative, like I was like, you have no editorial rights, but tell me what you think.
Right.
Tells me the 3 notes. I'm like happy to like make minor adjustments on phrases. And then I'm like, great. We're gonna now deep edit and go to the printer. After it goes to the printer, I share it with my 2 brothers. Because they were still authoritarian figures in my life. They disciplined me growing up.
Right.
And
I
I'd
get
like to
it.
say I was just really scared that if I gave it to them before it went to the printer, I might have changed some major parts, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So so anyways, my sister has read it. My brother, he was like, Susan, I don't read. I was like, I know. I'll give you the audiobook. I was like, you go on these long fishing
That's
trips.
funny.
You know the audiobook. He's like, for you, I'm gonna read. I'm like, okay. So he reads it. They were both part of the post-show talk back in the San Francisco book talk I did, where the mayor of San Francisco actually declared it the Manicurist Daughter Day, which I totally loved.
I love that. I just love that. I mean, wow. Go ahead.
But I will say, my brother Hank and my father and I do not talk about the book. They have not read the book, and we pretend it does
Oh,
not exist.
oh, good heavens. Well, some things just never change. But you know what? They changed in your heart and they changed in your mind. And you have to know that. You have to know that.
Yeah, I think for a long time I was resentful and sad. Took it really personally.
I get it.
Now I got love. I'm like, okay, that's your boundary, and
Well,
that's
especially when you realize all the people that you've touched, right? Through the book, through the one woman show. I mean, that really matters because there's so many of us who have gone through so much and we always feel alone out there, right? Family doesn't understand, friends don't understand, we don't understand. And here you are writing these books, you're reading, you're going to different stores and doing readings, and people are coming up to you and they're saying thank you.
that's right.
That is everything, right?
Yeah, and I've gotten feedback that folks are using my book as a form of bibliotherapy. So there's a
Oh,
treatment
wow.
center in Northern California, and they're using it for parents and children to understand each other better, reading the passages, discussing it, and then writing their own passages about their lives to build deeper compassion for each other. It's now used as a text for different college courses, 4 colleges in America, and 2 high schools are going to be piloting it this year in their AP class and their ethnic studies course. So I'm sitting here going like, whoa, it's been out for 4 months and now it's
Yeah.
got a life. She's got a
Yeah.
life. And every day I get notes from different people, Vietnamese, Asian, Jewish, men, all walks of life saying thank you.
Hmm.
Because we all have grief that we're dealing with. We all want to heal and we all want to love our families.
Yeah.
But how do we do that and also love ourselves?
You know, I come from an Italian family, and when you're grieving, everyone's usually yelling about it at the table. You know what I mean? So I hear your experience, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we went through everything the opposite way. People are yelling through there, they're definitely using food as comfort. And it's just interesting how different cultures sometimes handle things differently. Meeting in the middle somewhere along the way would have been a nice thing. Right?
Right, and we have this Vietnamese phrase, it's called "chia buồn." It literally means to share the sadness so that we
Yeah.
can minimize the gravity of that sadness.
Yeah.
But here with my mother, even on her death anniversary, when we light
Mm.
incense and go to her grave and offer her food, we don't talk about her.
Yeah. I'm talking about her.
How do
Yeah.
you share the sadness if you can't talk about it? In Asian American communities, mental health is heavily stigmatized.
Right.
And
I know.
talking about feelings is still seen as a sign of weakness. I think as a society, we've come a long way. Thank you so much, Brene Brown. Vulnerability is strength. It's a form of leadership. It's a form of courage. But that's not how it's interpreted in my culture.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, just want to touch upon a couple things because we only have a few more minutes. You've since co founded a company with your sister. Just briefly touch upon that, would you?
Yeah, we have an artisanal chocolate company called Sokola Chocolatier, and we actually started it when we were teenagers in Santa
Yeah.
Rosa, California. We were selling chocolates in front of my dad's nail salon at the weekly summer farmers market. I was hustling the chocolates. My sister and I were making it in our kitchen using a microwave and our stove. We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
Today, we have 2 storefronts. We just opened our second storefront in the San Francisco airport in Terminal 3, which is
Oh,
super
wow.
exciting. It's amazing.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and I just came back from helping my sister to help set that up, and I'm so proud of her. And you can buy those chocolates online. Our most famous box is a little Saigon box, which is a 4-course meal in 9 flavors, all the Vietnamese inspired best flavors.
I love it. Congratulations. That's quite a success. And you're a mom. Certainly, I'm sure one of your greatest achievements. You have a 4-year-old daughter. And what kind of mom?
Actually, he's a son. He identifies as he, him right now.
Oops, sorry about that. I don't know
He's
why I was
my
thinking,
son.
because we're talking about sisters, moms, you, and I'm like, I'm all in the girl mode. I get it. I have 3 sons, so sorry about that. But he identifies as he. Okay, so what kind of mom will you be for him when you think about it? Because I'm sure sometimes you're just lying awake at night thinking, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure I do this. When you think about that, what kind of mom do you hope to be for him?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm a successful mom if I can raise my son to be able to name his feelings, ask
Mm,
for what he wants with those feelings, right? To have the knowledge, the awareness of this is what I'm going through, and to communicate it and ask for what you want. Most adults I meet can't do that. They can't.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And I want him to be able to do that. For me as a mom, I have time to show up. The other
yeah.
day, he has show and tell on Tuesdays at preschool, and I said, "What do you want to bring?" And he said, "You,"
Oh,
because I just came back from the chocolate company, and I was showing him all the products, and he's like, "I want to bring you."
oh,
So I asked the school
wow.
to go show up and do it and like hand out chocolates, but my parents had no time to do that. I wish they did,
Yeah,
and I understand why they didn't. But with me and my son, I'm gonna show up. And also I'm gonna teach him how to swim because I barely know how to swim, and Vietnamese people don't know how to swim. So gotta show him doing that too, right?
yeah. How wonderful. I mean, how full circle you've come. But just know that your parents clearly had the same feelings in their heart. Just so many people don't know how to express that. So you're doing it for the family. Bravo. Good job. That's wonderful. Wow. So yeah, where will you be next? How can we find you? Will you be at a reading? Will you be taking the show on the road again? Talk to me.
Ooh, girl. When I remember I was like, I'm gonna do this 10-city national tour during my second trimester of pregnancy because that's when I'm gonna feel the best. And also I don't know the future of my arts career. Little did
Ooh,
I know I would have my kid March 2020, right? What was the future of theater then, right? It was obliterated.
right?
I think now having a 4-year-old, the idea of performing night after night is like, I'm
That's
not as
hard.
open to that, because I want to be there for my kid.
Yeah, yeah.
I am working on my podcast called Model Minority Moms, which you can subscribe to on any listening platform, where me and two other Harvard moms, we talk about what it's like to be everything for everyone else but ourselves. How we have to deal with our trauma that just comes crashing into your face after you have kids because you have to reconcile your career, your relationship, yourself, and it's not going to go away. And something's
No.
going to give. And so we talk about that openly. So, Model Minority Moms, stay in touch with me that way. Instagram at Susan Lieu, Lieu. You can watch 140 Pounds, stream it from my website, susanlieu.me. And I'm working on a couple of other creative projects. I think for me, I'm a multi-hyphenate storyteller. So I did theater, I did book. I want to go to film and TV.
Mm,
And so I'm working
I
on some
see it.
and some
I see it.
iterations. And I go back to what my parents did and what
Yeah,
what little they knew and how much they worked to manifest their dreams.
yeah,
And so I look back on my success in my arts career and I go, man, Susan, I was naive. Like if I had
yeah,
known the odds of the success, maybe I actually wouldn't have gone about it. But I think that you got to have that naivete and that boldness, right? Because otherwise you're never going to do it. And you
yeah,
never know what is possible. And so for me right now, I'm thinking about film and TV because I want broad appeal and I
yeah.
want my son to have more Asian American role models on screen.
Yeah, very important. That's actually very, very important. And I am glad that you mentioned your podcast. The podcast is terrific. Model Minority Moms. It's smart, it's funny, it's great. And there's your performance gene coming out right there in the podcast. I mean, that's a performance. We're doing a performance. I mean, not really, we're being ourselves, but you know what I mean. We're out there, we're live, we're talking about what's happening. Here's our little one or two woman show, right? And same with your podcast. So and that's fresh and it people can get a lot out of it. I think these podcasts are really important because people learn a lot. That's why I wanted to have you on. When I read this book and I heard about it, I thought, you know what, I know that my audience is really going to relate to her. You've got a lot that you can show us because you've been through it all and you're still evolving, right? Like we all are. So thank you, Susan. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Anything else you'd like to tell our audience before I let you go?
A recurring line in my book is
Mm,
when we feel, we heal. And I know it is easier to avoid pain. We as humans are designed to do that. But I got to tell you, when you go through all the way through, That's when post-traumatic growth is possible. That's when you can transform pain into power, and that's when you can liberate yourself.
Hmm.
So I say go, feel to heal.
When we feel, we heal. I love that. Thank you so much, Susan Lieu, for joining us. And please, people, pick it up. The Manicurist's Daughter, a memoir. Just a wonderful book. I really did enjoy reading it. I saw a lot of myself in this book, too. So I think a lot of other people who've gone through so much in their lives, when they read it, they'll say, that's happened. I get it. I've had it. It's very cathartic. So please, people, pick it up. I'm sure they can get it off your website, Amazon, wherever you get your books, or a small bookstore as well. So again, Susan, thank you very, very much for joining us. You're such a wonderful guest. And you can find our podcast on YouTube and Facebook because we stream it live. And then we post lots of promos on Instagram about our interview. And then, of course, we transfer it over into an audio interview. So you'll find us on iHeartRadio. You'll find us on Spotify. I mean, just about anywhere that you get your podcasts, Apple. Just put in Deborah Kobylt Live and Susan Lieu, and you will find this interview. So yay. And please share with your friends. Thank you. I love this. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. And we will leave you with a little dance from me and Susan. Anyway, have a great day.